This one is recent, and facts are still being discovered as we speak, but the British Pentyrch Incident is as shocking as they come. An aerial battle, a crash, a retrieval, a full-blown military operation in close proximity to residential neighborhoods in the countryside of Wales, in front of multiple eyewitnesses. Let's explore. Hi everyone, and welcome to Project Bluebook, where we explore all things unidentified. I am Thor, and thanks for tuning in. Did I mention the strangest part about Penturk? There was an advance notice of the events that would unfold on February 26, 2016, in Penturk, Wales, sitting in the south-sloping hills of Garth Mountain, just outside of Cardiff. The Royal Air Force knew about the incident before it happened. According to Eyewitness Cass Clark, a 57-year-old Penturk resident, military planes had been hovering over the farming fields outside of town for days, and roads into the Shylock Woods area had been restricted since at least the morning of the 24th. She was not the only one to realize that unmarked planes were circulating the area in shifts. One would fly circles until another one showed up to replace it, and then leave. The second wouldn't leave until a third aircraft showed up to replace it, and so on. On the night of the 25th, she observed a Sentry E-3 military observation plane circling the area. It is used to manage communication in a theater of operations. A security officer by profession, Clark knows something about observing her surroundings for safety and security. At 2 a.m. in the morning of the 26th, she woke up and was drawn to lights in the fields right behind her Penturk house. What she saw was out of this world, extraordinary in her own words. A giant pyramid was hanging in the air, enormous in size. She got dressed and went outside into her backyard. At first, she noticed a thick red light hovering high above the trees, thousands of feet up above the pyramid-shaped object. It was descending, and as it neared the ground, a green-colored light post came out of its bottom. Let's listen to Cass Clark.
It came in point first, and when it was fully here, it came down in a pendulum motion and lined up behind those trees there. And when it was in the upright position, it fired this green object out at the top like it had been fired out of a cannon, so fast. It skipped across and in front or just above these trees on my left-hand side here, and just rocked backwards and forwards gently. I can't tell you what shape it was because it was too bright, brighter than the moonlight, like a really bright green star at the size of a small car. The E-3 Sentry was flying up by this time and back round and coming back down again. I was standing on the gate, I had my leg actually hooked over the top, and I was staring through the bare trees to get a better look, because this pyramid listed to the right hand side, still turning very slowly anti-clockwise, started to move backwards away from us. And I said to Dave, it's landing. But in actual fact, the field rises there because you've been out and seen it, and the land was coming up to meet it. And as it neared the ground, it ejected this hand. I described it like a hand of lightning, but it wasn't thin lightning like we see here. It was thick, like fire, like fingers. And the whole thing lit up really brightly so you could see the whole outline of it. And such was the size of it, while I was staring at the bottom, you couldn't see the top. That's how big.
Now, her neighbors were out as well, including Dave, who would continue to research this incident with Clark for years to come. They tried to take pictures, but their phones weren't working. Clark felt she was being scanned while a red object moved out of the craft the other way. The green barrel-looking object moved in the opposite direction. That's when she heard the helicopters approaching, a fleet of them. The Royal Air Force had arrived on the scene. 4 jet fighters chased after the green cylinder, while other planes flew circles around 6 red orbs on the other side of the pyramid. A huge explosion was heard, and smaller ones followed. The red and green lights started moving around erratically, but the pyramid just stayed there, hanging in the air, rotating slowly, with the lights dimming and brightening. Meanwhile, it seemed the military was engaged in a dogfight with the orbs. The explosions were heard as far as the townships of Betwis and Port Talbot, and the population of a nearby hospital woke up by the sound of the explosions. Clark realized they were watching a battle in the skies over Penturk between the Royal Air Force and an unidentified aerial phenomena, in the plural. An Apache helicopter was seen on fire, making an emergency landing in the field. Another eyewitness, Michael Henbury, saw 2 red orbs descending from thick low clouds, and then he saw black, red, and green smaller orbs come out of the red orbs. He noted the lights kept swirling onto themselves to the eye, he said, like a cake dough swirling in a blender. He explained the green objects emerging from the top of the pyramid, and that 2 military fighter jets arrived from the direction of the Royal Air Force Base at St. Athens, while 2 others came straight from Cardiff to the southeast. They chased the objects to the northwest towards Lantersand, he said. The pyramid twisted itself to a vertical position, turning on its axis, and the red lights became so bright they illuminated the dark pyramid-shaped object. They now realized it had a surface. This craft didn't come from anywhere, they said. It just appeared, right where they saw it, as if through a portal from another dimension, another world. And the military apparently knew they were coming beforehand. Many local residents at a further distance than Clark, and who never saw the craft, still complained to the local police department about the noise of helicopters shaving the treetops of the neighborhood in the middle of the night. What was going on? This should not be allowed. A lady saw her trees and bushes disturbed outside her window by the wind swirl of the blades of a helicopter passing by. She and others have stated they saw 2 motor helicopters, describing a Chinook CH-47, a heavy-lift rotary aircraft. The details are so precise because the eyewitnesses were locals, and the description of one complements another, over and over again. They all had a rude awakening in the middle of the night by an out-of-this-world object, an event taking place right before their eyes, in their backyard, impossible to ignore and impossible to deny. Of course they would all try to take pictures on their phones. This was 2016 after all, and of course they would exchange text messages and post notices on local Facebook groups and other social media sites. All of those records exist. The local police department recorded multiple complaint calls. The hospital records show the disturbance in the middle of the night due to loud explosions nearby. And the British Geological Survey's data even confirms a seismological anomaly in the area, and at the time, Clark said the incident took place. The morning after, a Wales online news service posted an article stating a military exercise had taken place that accounted for the commotion the night before, with apologies from the Royal Air Force. Local news stations in Cardiff and elsewhere ran the same story. In response, multiple eyewitnesses came forward to protest this narrative. First off, the military exercise had taken place away from the town of Penturk a whole week earlier, and they were all aware of it. It even had a name, Chameleon, appropriately. Unlike the exercise, this was a major military operation. Live rounds were fired, explosions were used. Multiple people heard it and saw it. Ask any military officer in the UK or the US, and they will tell you, live rounds and explosives during military exercises are prohibited within, above, or in the vicinity of any populated area. It simply isn't done. Army protocol, period. This wasn't a drill. This was a real event. When Clark contacted the Ministry of Defense days later, she was directed to Section 26, which simply means military activity not of interest to the public. It also means it is top secret. Clark and others have gone on record stating it was a battle in the sky with an unknown out-of-this-world craft, and not an exercise. She has undergone 3 independent polygraph tests and passed them all. After posting several notes on social media describing what she saw and rejecting the exercise hypothesis, she asked other witnesses to come forward. Then, Clark was contacted by a mysterious person who wanted to meet her. She thought it was another witness and agreed, and she met with a man who, without the black suit, otherwise fit the men in black bill, like a banker from the 50s, clean-cut and expressionless. Only minutes into their meeting, the stranger offered up a question. Wasn't she worried about her safety and the safety of her family if she were to pursue this any further? Had she not heard that people that spoke up found themselves in fatal car accidents? The peculiarity about this conversation to Cass Clark was that it seemed friendly and hypothetical, almost like he was concerned about her safety if she spoke up. But at the same time, she realized it was also a disguised threat being delivered and directed at her should she choose to talk. Gary Jones, another local resident who would go on to write a book about the incident with Cass Clark, made electromagnetic force measures in the area in months and years after the incident. The EMF levels at the field and at spots in surrounding areas were significantly elevated, as high as 1.2, whereas the normal range is between 0.2 and 0.4. It was 3 to 6 times higher than normal, and it lasted for years. To him, this constitutes physical evidence that something did happen. Something was there to elevate the EMF readings. As strange and out of this world the event itself was, perhaps stranger yet is what happened before and after. First off, the military was actively observing the area more than 48 hours before the battle. The RAF knew this object was coming. They knew the spot exactly, and they were waiting for it, ready to fight it. That was before. Second, in the days that followed, eyewitnesses David, Clark, Michael, and others found an area in the woods outside of Penturk, only a couple of miles away, with freshly broken 60-foot-high trees snapped in half, while others swayed to the ground in the same direction, creating a track path into the thickness of the woods as if something had crashed into it. A campsite then formed near the woods. A large research team showed up and set up shop. It was combing through the wooded area, and they were all wearing hazmat suits, searching inch by inch, thoroughly combing the ground, using devices that looked like upsized laptops, says Clark. When she and her fellow eyewitnesses approached, they all stopped working in unison, rose up, looked over, and waited for a while, staring at them, and then they went back to work, searching the ground. To Clark, the behavior seemed strange. Because of their uniformity of clothing as well as behavior, they looked spooky to her, cultish, or clonish. To this day, there is no explanation for this incident, while evidence, testimonies, and records of the events keep collecting to local researchers. The British Freedom of Information Act was signed into law in 2000 and took full effect in 2005. The Ministry of Defense, however, does have latitude to classify certain material long-term. In other words, there are no plans by the MOD to release any of this information whatsoever. Clark knows what she saw, and so do other 100 residents of Penturk, Wales. You can watch and listen to this and other podcasts on Project Bluebook, where we explore all things unidentified. Each day, let's practice compassion and kindness. And please subscribe. I am Thor, and thanks for listening. See you next time.